Welcome to Chapter 2 in the Medium's book. The beginning just talks about how belief in the spirits and mediumship is not supernatural, because the teachings of the spirits of light and the mediums that Allan Kardec worked with and he compiled, they all have different meanings assigned to words that might be a little different than like what we popularly know words to mean. So how do you define the supernatural? That which is contrary to the laws of nature. But it says that because these things are provable, or there's a theory behind it, that we can assign natural causes to them, basically. It says that the thought is one of the attributes of spirit, that the possibility of acting upon matter, of impressing the senses, and as a natural consequence can then transmit its thought. So that there is nothing supernatural or marvelous about this. So if they're saying like if a dead man came back to life in the flesh, then that would be something more defined as a miracle or miraculous, but we find nothing of the sort in the teachings of Spiritism. So some people say when a spirit levitates a table, is that not against the law of nature of gravity? Yes, according to the law of gravity that is commonly understood, but mankind does not understand all of nature with our current science, or all our phenomenons, and also science is evolving and retracted, and then new theories, etc., are made. And that who would have thought a couple hundred years ago what we do now, or our current science, would have been possible. And we just didn't have theories to explain or develop these things yet. For example, a television, or using a telephone, speaking by distance. And the emerging science of the time, industrial science, and back in the 1900s, led to the study in Spiritism, because if you're able to transmit communication over a long distance by energy, then why would not talking to a spirit be possible? Just scrolling down to page 11. A spirit is nothing more than a soul of someone who has lived in a body, one who has given up its physical envelope, leaving them with an ethereal envelope, or an energy body, invisible to us in its normal state. So later on, it defines the spirit body a bit better than the soul, because the soul actually isn't usually the spirit or spirit body that you're dealing with. So the energy body they call a fluidic envelope, and what we talk about as fluidos or currents, corrientes, what we feel and what's enacted on our own energy body, or our own fluidic envelope as an incarnated being. That's how we get vibes when we interact with other people's energy body, and also the fluidic envelope of spirits, and that's also how they act on us. And that's why the philosophy in these books is really important to understand, is the mechanics behind, the theory behind of how they can talk with us. etc. So the existence of spirits is not a preconceived theory. It's not a hypothesis invented to explain certain facts. It's a result of experience and observation, and a natural consequence of the existence of the soul. To deny its existence is to deny the soul. If anyone thinks they can give a more rational explanation of the phenomenon, then go ahead, but to give a explanation of all the facts of the case, and after looking at the merits of both sides of the question, and actually after a thorough study, because many people wanting to debunk things, etc., aren't adherents of Spiritism or don't fully investigate these things because they don't have a real interest. Everything which cannot be explained by the laws of matter is supernatural to people who are only like atheists or material thinking. And it's not a matter of superstitions because they're saying that this is a spirit science. They've studied it, they've tested it out. They've looked at commonality and the experience and the observation of mediums and during seances. And that it's not a mere superstition like they're saying of religion that people only give the appearances of, or for keeping children in order. If something is true or false, then it has to be true for all people. And if it's false, then it's not useful to anybody, basically. So it's saying that it's not just about what you want to religiously believe. They're saying it's because these principles are true, no matter what your religious beliefs, because this is a spiritual study. It's not a religious study, and they try not to bring their religion into it, although they definitely do have their Christian or religious biases that can be seen throughout this material that I see anyways. But we have to look at that these were spiritual Christians, and it's through their perspective that those biases can't not help but be applied to it, or personal biases even in science. And we have to look at the time period that they were kind of ahead of their time. So those who attack Spiritism as being marvelous or out there really play into the hands of the materialist, because they deny anything that's not material. And they deny the existence of the soul. And that the bottom of their thought is that they reason from material principles, only what they can define by something solid or physical. Because they deny the effects of spirit. So even people that don't really believe in spiritual things, they can't deny manifestations when it happens to them, or they can't deny certain things that can be measured. They'll just say, well, we don't know how to explain that. But you can't really deny that there's effects of spirits upon our physical world and upon people. And so Kardec really spends a lot of his time trying to defend the existence or the reality of Spiritism. But it also says in the beginning of one of the chapters that don't bother arguing with anybody who doesn't believe in the existence of the soul after death, or that spirits can communicate with us, because if they're not open-minded to it, then you can never convince them of anything. Spiritists don't deny that there are charlatans, and that some of the effects of spirit manifestation are produced for profit or for money, from overexcited imagination, fanaticism, exaggeration, or mental illness. But Spiritism is not responsible for people that have abused its doctrine or its practice. Many people abuse religion, etc., power, in lots of other ways. or who, I guess, romanticize it. There are things that can appear miraculous, but there is explanations to spirit manifestations, basically. People usually are not informed about the practice. They usually have not invested themselves in a serious inquiry of the phenomenons, but feel that they can still talk about it or have an opinion about it or further their position in the world of science to talk about what they don't understand. So Kardec was a scientist, and they really seriously thought that this should be studied by, and it was studied by, doctors, psychologists, chemists, etc. at the time. Politicians, lawyers, judges. And so it gets into some principles here that spiritist phenomenon proves the existence of the soul that survives the death of the body, and the manifestations of which result what we see as spirit communication with us. That it is natural because its cause can be known. That it's not a superstition. That it's a foundation of truth in many popular beliefs, but it does not accept all fantastic stories created by imagination about it. That we need to have spirit discernment, etc., of our experiences, but also the communications and of spirits that we get, and also of our own thought processes. That they apply a lot of moral consequences and a lot of morality to the study of spirits, and that it's a new philosophy that requires serious, persevering, and careful study by one who has thoroughly studied it and sounded its deepest mysteries with patience, of a conscientious observer, as well as one versed in every branch of the subject and acquainted with all facts of the case and every argument that could be opposed to them, which they must refute not by denials but by arguments still more conclusive, and give a more rational explanation than that is given by Spiritism, is needed to defend against Spiritism, but such a critic has yet to be discovered. The word marvelous or miracle means in its word origin something extraordinary or wonderful or admirable, but has lost its original meaning and has been come to understand of something of an act of divine power contrary to the known laws of nature. It's not going to deny that God can do this if they want to, or act in opposition of laws that they themselves established. It's just that they're saying that spirit phenomenon is not a miracle. Science works miracles daily in the eyes of the ignorant in former times. Scientists today would be passed for a sorcerer. And ignorant people back in medieval times, or even today, believe that all unusual knowledge comes from the devil and then will persecute them. Today we have become a little more civilized, and we just call those people crazy that don't agree with us or outside our beliefs. Talks about magnetism, and people who can do extraordinary things with abilities are pretty rare, and that, like magnetism, spiritism reveals to us natural laws or spiritual laws, which are not completely unknown. Spiritism can cause a table to knock, or the dead to knock to communicate, or through automatic writing can cause the dead to write, is no more miraculous than the physician who restores a sick man to health, or the electrician who can produce energy or lightning, artificial lightning. Whoever should pretend to perform miracles by the aid of Spiritism would prove themselves to be a charlatan or pretension. Spirit phenomenon, like magnetic phenomenon, before their cause was unknown, could pass for prodigy. I think that Kardec is really warning against looking at a medium as somebody special who can do special things because of a lack of humility, and that it's not regarded as someone being special. It's regarded as a natural effect upon a person that has the ability to do it, and that mediumship is a gift, but it's given to a medium to kind of serve the community and for a process of refining their own self, and through going through a lot of tests and suffering. So I think he's just saying this to really stop people from creating a cult following around a medium, or for people to not do the work themselves, or for people to be taken in by a cult-like guru and see the medium, and again the phenomenon, as something extraordinary. And Kardec likes to talk a lot about old scientists and philosophers like Socrates, and people that studied astronomy, etc. And when people didn't understand how planets revolved around each other, etc., these bodies of planets in the sky that were kind of levitating, they ascribed any scientific phenomenon they didn't understand to religious ideas. Not that God didn't create those planets or whatever. I'm just saying that whatever they could not explain by science, they attributed it to something miraculous. So let the reader only refer to the theory that we give further on concerning apparitions, and they will see that the phenomenon is simple and that it is probable, and a great number of other physical phenomenon, because some of it cannot be explained yet, or no key has been found to them. Therefore, we let everybody free to form their own judgment. Spiritism does not occupy itself with a matter of things that is not within the doctrine of Spiritism. All we say is that Spiritism reveals to us new laws and gives us the key to a multitude of things which used to be considered supernatural and now find a logical solution in Spiritism. So we are not in a haste to deny what we do not understand. Spirit phenomenon are sometimes contested because they appear to contradict known explanation or laws, and therefore people cannot see how they are to be accounted for. If we give them a rational explanation of such things, then doubt can cease. Explanation is the true means of conviction. We constantly see people who have never witnessed any spirit phenomenon fully convinced of the reality of those phenomenon as we are, because they have read and understood the possibility, even if they have not experienced spirit phenomenon for themselves. If we don't believe anything that we have not seen for ourselves, then the things that we believe would be very minimal. For example, how many people have seen, this is just my example now, how many people have seen a car being built in the factory, or a rocket ship launching at NASA, or seen any number of these things, but we watch it on the internet. We believe that these things are possible or are done, even if we have not personally seen it in the flesh or present. We're not present for those events. We still believe in other things, even if we haven't seen things themselves. How many scientists believe that in, all these theories of atoms, etc., but have never looked through an electron microscope, for example? So guys, leave your questions and comments below if you've been reading the material, things that you've thought about, and thanks for watching. And if you understand this material, then you can grow a lot as a medium.